you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement, et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked the young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Bittt.Tibi. It's gonna be sick.
Matt Ohayon with you on this Friday night. No more Canadiens hockey, but don't worry, we still got plenty of things to get to when it comes to the Canadiens. Tony is off as per usual. If you're not familiar with the format, he goes Monday to Thursday. I go Friday nights. All right. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group is a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. We're also brought to you by La Bittt beer, brewed in Quebec and a winner of dozen international awards. La Bittt offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bittt. Embrace your true nature. And by Playground, they have over 600 machines, poker tournaments, and playground casino games, daily promotions, and unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal. I don't know if it's coming through on camera, but I am, I don't know if anyone's noticed. I am growing a mustache. I'm keeping the beard. I can't remember the last time I shaved my face with a razor, but the mustache is coming in. I mean, I just shaved my face the other day, and I always leave my mustache for last. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, it doesn't actually look too terrible. I'm gonna try this on and see how the people like it. So that's that. I don't know if you're not following me on Twitter, I also I committed to running a half marathon by the end of July, which probably wasn't the smartest decision, but hey, I mean, we're going to do it. We're going to run a half marathon. Tony made his weight loss commitment on BPM Sport. So I felt inspired. A friend of mine, he wanted to run 30 kilometers before his wedding. So I said, hey, let's run a half marathon together at the end of July. So that's what's new in my life. Let's bring in our guest. He is from the Montreal Gazette. His name is Stu Cowan, a regular on Friday nights. Stu, how are we doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I don't know. Have you ever been into the running at all?
I hate running. I remember I've high school memories or gym class, the old Canadian fitness tests and the 12-minute run. That and the flexed arm hang were the two things I hated.
Oh yeah, the old beep test. I didn't do too well on that when I was in high school. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of those things that, you know, because as someone who works a desk job, I mean, I don't move very much. So I was in the gym. I'm in the gym almost every day, and I always start out with 30 minutes of running, which I started off hating, and then I started to hate it a little less because I make it a competition with myself now, which is a way to trick myself into thinking I like it. So I said, hey, let's go for the half marathon.
I used to rollerblade a long time ago, but I haven't done that in a while. But I do have a stationary bike I use because at least I can watch TV while I do it. But jogging, I've never got into the running thing. That's never been my thing.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the part where everyone says, you know, oh, it's addictive. It's so addictive. You get the runner's high, and I'm like, I'm still waiting for that moment to happen to me. Anyways, let's talk Montreal Canadiens. They just wrapped up their season last night and a 5-4 loss to the Bruins. So they finished fifth to last in the NHL. I'm sure a lot of Canadiens fans were happy about that, including my friend Matt Ohayon, who I went to the hockey game with, who cheered. It was the first time in my life I had ever seen him cheer for another team that wasn't the Canadiens. When I forget who scored the game-winning goal, but when the Bruins scored the 5th goal, he jumped out of his seat. He was all excited. So yeah, I mean, Canadiens fans, I guess a lot of them are happy with the 8.5%, but here we are at the end of the season. And I got to say, just with the weather this past week, it was pretty crazy to think that I was walking into the Bell Center. I could have walked into the Bell Center in shorts and it wasn't the playoffs. I mean, it's not the same.
No, it's not. I mean, I took the bus. Actually, I live in Brossard, and I jumped on the bus yesterday afternoon to go downtown for the game. And I ran into a couple of buddies of mine on the bus, both wearing golf shirts and t-shirts and shorts, sorry. And they were going downtown to first have a couple of beers on a terrace, and then they were going to the game. And it had that playoff feel, right? It was really I think back to when the Canes went to the Stanley Cup final in 2021, when they were only allowed like 2,500 fans in the Bell Center. And the year the Canes finally get it to the Stanley Cup final, there hardly anybody can get into the Bell Center. But I mean, Montreal, it's playoff weather, and it seems weird for somebody my age who grew up when the Habs not only made the playoffs every year, they won the Stanley Cup almost every year. It's weird not having playoffs in Montreal. But the news conference today with Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes, they're on the right path. I mean, winning the Stanley Cup in a 32-team league with the salary cap is not easy. Just getting in the playoffs isn't easy. But this is a team that is on the right path as far as a rebuild towards bringing playoff hockey back to Montreal. It was interesting. One of the things that Kent Hughes said today, going into next season, they're not going in saying we have to make the playoffs, but he thinks they have a shot at making the playoffs next season. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, a lot of things can change between now and the start of the season. If they win the draft lottery, get Connor Bedard, their odds of making the playoff next season are a lot better. But they're taking it step by step. But I thought the first full season of the rebuild, when you factor in all the injuries and everything else, 13-point improvement in the standings. They moved up from 32nd to 28. So there's signs for hope that playoff hockey could return to Montreal in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not going to go out on a limb already and make the way too early prediction of the Canadiens making the playoffs, but you just don't need to look any further than the Seattle Kraken, right? I mean, New
Jersey Devils too.
Well, there you go. The Devils were bad for a while, but the Kraken, their first NHL season last year, everyone kind of half expecting, them to pull a Vegas and, crack into the playoffs, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. And the reality set in that they were an expansion team and they played like an expansion team. Second season, they're in the playoffs. So, I mean, it's definitely possible. I don't want to get people's hopes up, if people take my word as the word of gospel. But it's one thing that the NHL is just such a weird league. It really is. And it makes for, the best competition because, you can't really tell at the beginning of a season who on the bubble is going to make it and who won't, because, at this point, I mean, everyone kind of expects the Penguins to make it every year, and they did it. A lot of people have been saying it's the first time in 15 years. It's not the first time in 15 years. The Canadiens technically eliminated them from playoff contention in the COVID year. But it just goes to show you, anything could happen. And that really holds true in the NHL more than any other sport, I find.
Well, I mean, you would think the Bruins will win the Stanley Cup this season easily, until you think that the President's Trophy, I think it was 86 was the first year it was handed out to the regular season champion. There's only 8 teams that won the President's Trophy since then that went on to win the Stanley Cup, and nobody's done it in the last 10 years. So would you be totally shocked if the Bruins got knocked out in the first round? I wouldn't be. I mean, they should win, but it wouldn't be a total shock if they lost. I think back a few years ago, it was Tampa Bay had a crazy regular season, finished way ahead of everybody else. They got swept in the first round by Columbus. You're right. The NHL playoffs are crazy. You get a hot goalie, you get a team that has home ice advantage and loses the first game at home, maybe the first 2 at home. The whole series swings from there. And I mean, who would have thought the Canadiens would go to the Stanley Cup final in 2021? Nobody. Carey Price stood on his head. Their 4 big defensemen played great. They got some breaks here and there. Alex Galchenyuk's blind pass in the offensive zone leading to the 2-on-1 breakaway the other way with Suzuki and Caulfield, and Canes go on to win the series. So that was part of what makes the NHL playoffs so great is the unpredictability. And the first round of the playoffs are always fantastic. You know, Tampa Bay, Toronto should win this season, but people said last season that they should win, and they didn't. And they haven't won a first-round playoff series. I think it's 2004 the last time they won a first-round playoff series. So the first round of playoffs I love. It's great. It's fantastic hockey, and there's always upsets. That's part of what makes it so good.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the first round of the playoffs to begin. I was very, very pleased to hear when I spoke on the phone with a friend of mine, because there's just so much going on, and you can't keep track of everything. I'm trying to keep up with the NBA play-in tournament. Yeah. I'm trying to keep up with the MLB season, and I was just standard thinking, expecting the playoffs to start on Tuesday. No, they start on Monday, so that's great news because I really can't wait. Really, you said it best. There is really nothing for my money. It's the best playoffs sport you could watch is the first round of the NHL playoffs.
Well, the NHL playoffs to me are the best. They're the toughest. It's the toughest trophy to win in pro sports. I mean, I'll argue anybody, but I mean, they play 82 games just to get to the playoffs. And then 4 rounds of the playoffs, you can play another 28 games if they all go 7. You're playing every second night with the physical grind and the travel. It's a marathon. You were talking about running a half marathon this summer. The NHL playoffs are an incredible grind. And I always, after teams are eliminated, especially once they go to the final, and then you find out all the injuries these guys played through. And it's crazy. I mean, today with the Canadiens, we found out about the injuries of Monahan and Gallagher. We knew Monahan had been playing on a broken foot. We found out Gallagher was playing on a broken ankle. He broke the same ankle twice this season. It's what hockey players put their bodies through is absolutely crazy. It really is.
So you know what? Let's jump into it. And whenever I bring up a player, because we're going to give our player grades for every player or most players that played this season. Because I mean, if we gave every player, I mean, we'd be here till next week with all the players that played for the Habs. But so we'll give for most players, we'll give them a letter grade. And then whenever we give that grade, you jump in with something that may have stuck out to you in the post-mortem with regards to that player. Right. So that's the way we're going to do it. So let's start off with an easy one. We'll throw out the softball. Nick Suzuki. He is one of 2 players that I said I will be giving an A. I thought, for this guy to have his first season as captain go the way that it did, with all the injuries and, the constant changing of the line mates, especially once Cole Caulfield and Kirby Dach went down, this guy had next to no consistency. And it's funny that was the case because he was basically the only consistent part of the Canadiens night in, night out, because he played all 82 games, which is, more than enough reason to give him an A. But not only that, with all those inconsistent line mates and all that, he still managed to put up a career high in goals and put up a very good number of points. So he gets an A from me.
Yeah, I agree. Career high goals, career high points. He tied Cole Caulfield finally last night. Somebody caught up to Cole Caulfield's goal totals. But you're right. I mean, the only Canadian to play in all 82 games this season, the only Canadian to play in all 82 games last season. And you're right. I mean, he finished with 60-something points. I remember the exact number. But
I think it was 64.
Yeah, but
or 66.
It only ranks around 80th in the NHL. But as you said, he played with he lost Cole Caulfield for the last 30-odd games, his line mate. I mean, how many more assists would he have had on Caulfield goals right there? He was playing with AHL line mates at one point. He had Yoel Army and Jonathan Drouin as his line mates last night. He's played with everybody. And the thing that really impressed me about Suzuki, and I had a chat with Mike Matheson about him, and he said he just leads by example. He's not a guy who talks a lot. He's not a guy who's a big rah type guy. He just shows up every day and he does his job. And for other guys, it's sort of like, let's get on, let's follow this guy. And it's unfair to compare anybody really to Sidney Crosby, but Mike Matheson played with Sidney Crosby for 2 seasons as a captain, and he said he sees similarities in the leadership qualities of both of them. And that he said Crosby was never a rah guy, never a big talker guy, but he just showed up every day and he worked hard at every practice and he worked hard at every game and he gave it his all and he blocked shots and he did all the stuff that Nick Suzuki does. And he said that he also because Crosby didn't speak a lot, when he did speak, when the time was right to speak, everybody listened. It was like silence and everybody listened. And Bob Gainey was the same type of a captain. I spoke with guys who played with him. He didn't speak a lot, but when he did, everybody listened. And I don't think Nick Suzuki has really found his voice yet. He's only 23 years old. He's the captain of the Canadiens. I think he's still leaning into that a little bit. Joel Edmondson helped him a lot in the leadership role this year. I know that. I know Josh Anderson did. A big adjustment for a guy, not only the weight of the captaincy, the first year of his big contract, so much weight, so much pressure on him. And he showed up every game. The longest stretch he went without a point was 5 games. He had 19 multi-point games, I think it was. And he did just a little bit of everything. I mean, that shorthanded goal he scored against the Islanders. And then, the game against Boston last night, it's a meaningless game where a loss helps them more than a win. And 5 minutes left in the game, here's Nick Suzuki blocking shots still. So it's just that leadership by example. And he sets a really good example for this team. I spoke with him today when they had their post-mortem news conference, and he said he's going to spend the summer again in Montreal. He might go home for maybe a week or two, but he's planning to be here and go to the Grand Prix and go to the festivals and he's become the face of the Canadiens. For so many years it was Carey Price, and now Nick Suzuki is becoming the face of the Canadiens, along with Cole Caulfield, but more so Nick Suzuki because he wears a C on his shoulder. And he's just, when you're around him, he's I shouldn't call him a kid because he's a captain of the Canadiens, but he's a good guy. Like he comes across as a really good person, and that's the kind of culture that Marty St. Louis is trying to build in the locker room. As he said, he wants everyday guys, he wants good people, and Nick Suzuki's one of those guys. And was the right captain for this time. I thought Brendan Gallagher would have been a great captain of the Canadiens, but when they named Suzuki captain, we didn't know if Gallagher, what his health would be this season. We didn't know if the Canadiens were going to try and trade him if he stayed healthy. It would mean he might be captain for a year or two, then it could be somebody else. So now you have a captain in place who's going to be captain for the foreseeable future. And I agree with you, an A for Nick Suzuki this season.
Yeah, and you know what? Just to close on it, and you touched on it. It's just, even as someone who doesn't have locker room access, it's very apparent that he's coming to work every day and he is doing his job and he is going out there and he's not just doing his job. He's trying to do it the best that he could. The effort level, I don't think, there were some games where you've told me after, Martin St. Louis, I saw him angry. He was angry after those games. I don't think I could point to more than 2 games, and I'm even doing that just to give myself a little bit of breathing room, where I said Nick Suzuki dogged it tonight. It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. I mean, he has off nights like every player does.
Yeah.
No player plays 82 games and is great every game, 82 games. No player plays all 82 games fully healthy. Nick Suzuki played through injuries. There was points this season when he wasn't taking part in some practices or morning skates, nursing something. But he showed up every night, every game he's there. Every single game he's there. Luck obviously is involved also. You crash into the goalpost like Josh Anderson did, is a high ankle sprain. I mean, that's bad luck. Brendan Gallagher slap shot off the ankle in the 14th game of the season, breaks his ankle, bad luck. So he's been lucky also, but it's also a lot of the preparation that goes into off the ice in the summer, between games, keeping your body healthy. That goes a long way to it also. So a mix of luck and keeping himself in good shape, keeping himself prepared, and just that willingness and that desire to show up every day and work hard. And his Ironman streak, I believe, is the 4th longest among current NHL players. For anybody to play 82 games, all 82 games in an NHL season is remarkable the way the game is played today. And here's a guy who's done it back-to-back seasons. Yeah,
just really, there's really nothing negative to say about Nick Suzuki in his first season as captain. I mean, just we've said it all at this point already. So let's move on. He didn't. We're gonna just go by point leaders because that's the way I have it on my screen. So the next one will be Kirby Dach, and I'll let you go first.
Yeah, Kirby Dach, for a grade.
Yeah,
I'd give him a B. It took him a little while to find himself, and Marty St. Louis had him on the wing, he had him at center, he moved him back and forth. But moving forward, he's going to be a center. And what a great trade that Kent Hughes made to get Kirby Dach. Disappointing time in Chicago. The time he was there, 3rd overall pick, it just didn't work out for him there. It's easy to forget how young these guys are.
Yeah.
So Kirby as a fresh start for him. And I think back to the video the Canadians did from the draft when they made the trade, and Kent Hughes was on the phone with Kirby Dach on the cell phone talking to him, and he said to him, he says, "One thing I know, you're going to love the coach." Talking, we're looking forward to having you. We want to have you here. You're going to like the coach. And he did. And Marty St. Louis was able to bring the best out of Kirby Dach that we've seen so far in the NHL. He can be a dominant force. He's hard to get the puck off of. He works hard in both ends. He can control the puck. He's got great vision. He's got an ability to play with smart hockey players like Suzuki and Caulfield and guys like that. But moving forward, he's going to be a centerman. And whatever the potential was that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton saw in him to make the trade to get him, and then their ace card is Marty St. Louis, who seems to have an ability to get the best out of guys. I mean, look, Cole Caulfield, when he was a different player after when Marty St. Louis came in. He couldn't score before, and then Marty St. Louis comes in and brings out the best of them. We saw a little bit of Gurianov when he first got here. That sort of tailed off a little bit afterwards. But for Kirby Dach, he's young. He's going to get bigger and stronger than he is even right now. He seemed when he came in, from interviewing him, that I couldn't tell if he was sort of nervous or if he was standoffish or whatever it was. And I was talking, it was Arpon Basso, I think I was talking to. He made a good point. He said he's a guy who had been bashed so much in Chicago when he was there, and he probably came here with something to prove again. And I think he sort of had his guard up. But as the season went on, that guard seemed to come down a bit as his game seemed to improve. And I think he maybe got his confidence back. He went through a rough time in Chicago, probably lost some confidence. Marty St. Louis was able to bring the confidence back. I remember he had that extended stretch where he was out. And when he came back, St. Louis put him on the wing the first game. And some people were freaking out. He's supposed to be a center. Why are you playing him on the wing? And Marty St. Louis had a great answer. You can disagree or agree with some of the decisions Marty St. Louis makes, but he always has a good explanation for why he did it. And he said his first game back, he missed a lot of time. He didn't want to have him worried about all the defensive assignments that come with a center. Put him on the wing. I think it was a Suzuki that game. Give him a good chance to get his back in, feeling good, touching the puck. And then the next game, he was back in center. And moving forward, he's going to be a center, and just a great acquisition. I give him a B because I just think that it took him a little while to find himself here. But I think next season, the Canadians, I'm sure, are expecting big things from Kirby Dach.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. We're 2 for 2. I was the letter I had in my head was B as well. I thought it was a good move right when they announced the trade at the draft. I go, that is a very, very interesting move. Because for all the reasons you pointed out, this guy's a former 3rd overall pick, and yeah, he didn't do great in Chicago, but he had flashes of brilliance over there. And how many times have I had you on? And, one of the points I just made was I feel like I said it 3 times, Kirby Dach has arrived. That's it. He is here. He is there. And then, the injuries, as is for basically everyone that's not named Nick Suzuki, derailed his season. So, for the times he was on the ice, definitely a B. My favorite Kirby Dach moment was scoring the shootout winner against Chicago, and just oh yeah, that was my favorite Kirby Dach.
But talk about confidence. That's the confidence and a little bit of the cockiness coming back to him, right? There's nothing wrong with being a little bit cocky when you can back it up. And he went in there, he backed it up, and good for him.
Well, that's it, and you need that, especially as a professional athlete. Because you'll just get eaten alive by, anyone. So, you even see little glimpses of Nick Suzuki. You'll catch a still frame of him, yapping at someone. And you're like, yeah, this guy is, he's got a dog in him.
Suzuki has a quiet confidence. Everything he does, he's just a quiet kid. He's not a big talk. Everything he does is quiet, but he's quiet, confident. He's quiet, strong. He's a lot stronger than I think a lot of people realize he is. Quiet confidence. He's so smart. He's the sort of quiet, solid performer. Yeah,
that's it. And the next one, not so much of a quiet, solid performer. I would call him quite loud with his play. And kind of maybe a little bit of a fan darling, definitely a fan darling, little bit of a media darling when the good times are happening. Cole Caulfield, I'm going to give him, for the times he was on the ice and for the times he played in the 46 games, I'm going to give him an A. He's my second A, and he's the only other A that I'm going to be giving. because again, I mean, he was on pace before he went down with that shoulder injury. Well, he's on pace for 45 goals prorated. So any player who scores 45 goals, you can't really give him anything less than an A, especially, the Canadians. I don't even remember the last time they had a 40 goal scorer, let alone 45, 50 goal scorer. It's been a long time. Certainly, I don't think 50s happened in my lifetime. So,
no, Stefan Riche was the last one. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So, I give him an A. I just thought he was fantastic. Anytime he had his off nights as well, I found, especially. Exactly. And especially they were a little more apparent when the power play, I mean, it was a thing all season, but when it was really, at the forefront of things going wrong with this team, it kind of felt like Cole Caulfield struggled with that a little bit. I feel like quietly he took some onus on that because he knows he was the trigger man and, everyone's looking for him on the ice. But all that being said, I got to give him an A.
Yeah. Guy can score goals. I mean, it's like crazy. And it's funny. I had dinner before the game. A couple of games ago, I had dinner at the Bell Center Media Lounge. I was sitting with Brian Mudrick and Dave Poulin, who cover the under-18 championships every year for TSN. And they were saying how they had seen Caulfield play in that tournament. And they were both saying, like, right then you knew Dave Poulin, played in the NHL. He's been in management. He's seen a lot of hockey. He said he knew right then this kid would score in the NHL just by the way. Even then, he said the pass doesn't have to be perfect. The chance can be like an opening that much. Pass can be bouncing. The pass can be behind them. The pass can be in front of them. He knows how to finish. He knows how to shoot. He knows how to score, and that's a skill that you can't really teach. And the chemistry that him and Suzuki have together, as I mentioned before, how many more points Suzuki would have had if Caulfield had played? I'm saying at least 15, I think. And, Caulfield was on pace. I mean, probably 40 goals, maybe pushing 50, depending how the season went. The concern with him, of course, he had the shoulder injury. He's not the biggest guy in the world. You wonder, like one of the things today is he doesn't have a new contract yet. I thought today might be perfect day to announce it, right? Everything, send the players off into the off season. Every fan's feeling good. Cole Caulfield signed. And Herb Zurkowski asked him the question in the scrum, do you have a contract yet? And you went, nope. Like it was a mix of disappointment and like just reading his body language, the way he said it. Like I think he probably thought it would be done by now also. But that's the dilemma sort of Kent Hughes is in now. Like how much do you pay him? Do you pay him more than your captain, Nick Suzuki? Caulfield hasn't played a full season really yet. He's been hurt once. Like, how much do you give him and how much length? And it's a gamble on both sides. Like, is Nick Suzuki willing to not take a long-term deal and take a shorter-term deal, hoping he can make more money moving forward, and then maybe get hurt and you don't? So there's a lot of things for both sides to weigh here. But to get back to our point here, I mean, I thought he was I think he did when he was on the ice, he was outstanding.
Yeah, and just to pick up quickly on what you said about the contract situation, I mean, he doesn't strike me. I mean, he's going to be a great player, and I think both sides want to get it done here, so I think it will get done. It's just a matter of it's just money. So it's dollars that are gonna it'll happen.
Well, sure. You'd think it would, but the longer it drags on, your memories of the offer sheet for Kotkaniemi. Offer sheets don't happen a lot, but if you're another GM and there's not a lot of, you see the potential on Cole Caulfield and you make a ridiculous offer sheet to make it difficult for the Canadians to match. That's why I think the sooner the Canadians can get this taken care of, the better. Yeah. And I thought the fact it wasn't announced today, I was like, okay, this isn't going as smooth as probably both sides had hoped at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I still expect it to get done. It's just, maybe he wants more than Nick Suzuki. Nick Suzuki is, I don't know. Maybe he's the internal cap limit. They're making a hard stance on that. Who knows what it may be? But he's not at the level. The potential is there. It's hard to argue, but concrete. What has he done? He's not that blank check type of player just yet.
No, and there's a lot of things. I mean, Kent Hughes has said he won't discuss contract negotiations while they're going on. Once the contract is signed, he's willing to discuss how they got to the point they are. But it could also be the Canes want to lock him up long-term 8 years, and he only wants to sign 2 years. And gamble on himself, sort of like what PK Subban did, and hope the next contract's even bigger. So there's a lot of things, possibilities, but the certainty at this point is it's not going as smoothly or as quickly as probably both sides had hoped it would.
So let's move on to the next guy. Another new face in town. Well, kind of returning to town. It was Mike Matheson. Wow. I didn't know quite what to expect from him when he came into the lineup, because it's kind of tough because when the Canadians were starting 5 rookie defensemen by the time he came back onto the ice, and he just, I don't know what I was expecting. I was expecting the blue line as a whole to get better, but man, oh man, he really impressed me this year. I mean, just even last night, the game didn't mean much, if anything, but going end to end, deking around some Boston Bruins, trying to make plays happen, crashing into the net. That's pretty amazing. And he also just to go with it, 34 points in 48 games is pretty damn good for a defenseman. So I'm going to go with B+ for the hometown boy of Mike Matheson.
Yeah. And career high in points despite missing so many games.
Yeah, 48 games.
The thing with him is that his skating is his game, right? And then he had that abdominal injury at training camp, which delayed the start to the season. Then he had a groin injury. Then he came back and injured the groin again. So he wasn't healthy. So he struggled early in the season. And part of it was because the best part of his game, he couldn't do it. He couldn't, the skating was limited because of the injuries. And then the last part of the season, especially after the All-Star break, I mean, boy, we saw the skating ability, and we saw his confidence grow, and we saw him get better game after game after game. I'd give him a B as opposed to B+ just because of the way he struggled at the beginning, but it's not his fault. Like, the injury was related to it also. But he's a guy who he's going to play a big role on this team moving forward. And he was asked today, at his age, does he still think he can be at his peak performance when this team gets to the point in the rebuild where they can contend to be a contender in the playoffs every year? And he said he does. I mean, that doesn't surprise. I agree. He's in an amazing physical shape. Like, he's in. He never gets tired. I mean, Marty St. Louis said he goes up, he goes back, he goes up, he goes back. There's a couple overtime games. I think he was on the ice for 4 minutes of the overtime. And I remember one specific game, he made a rush. He was like 2 minutes into a shift at least, made a rush, got caught, and I was like, oh boy, this is done. And then he just raced all the way back and got back and made a defensive play. This is like 2 minutes into a shift in 3-on-3. So he's going to play a big role in this team moving forward. Also, from a leadership standpoint, I spoke with him the other day, and he was talking about, how Nick Suzuki, we were talking about him earlier, the pressure on Nick Suzuki. Like, the guys come in the room every day, and there's a list of who the media wants to talk to, and Nick's name's always at the top of the list. And Matheson sort of tried to help him in that regard. The fact he's bilingual makes him, the French media really wants to speak to him because there's not that many guys who can speak French in the room. So he had a great quote, Master. It's not fair to leave it all to one guy. It's a team game. You shouldn't have one guy having to be the voice every day. And he's happy to do that role. So he's going to be a really, really important player in this team moving forward. And another great trade by Kent Hughes. I mean, Jeff Petry's had a so-so year, and Mike Matheson, younger, cheaper, loves playing in Montreal. His wife's happy in Montreal. So it's all good with Mike Matheson.
Wow, Stu Cowan disrespecting the other part of that trade, Ryan Poehling. I think everyone forgot that he was a part. Yeah, exactly. I think everyone forgot that he was a part of that trade.
Another one of those wonderful Habs first-round draft picks from the.
Yeah, there you go. So let's move on. We don't have to spend too much time on this next one. I mean, Mike Hoffman, 34 points in 67 games, also felt the injury bug a little bit this year, as did, with everyone. I'm going to just, C. I'll give him a C. I'll devoid him of the C-, and I'll give him a C. He had some good ones.
He is who he is. Moments. He is who he is. He's a C hockey player in the NHL. His thing is he has that shot and he can score, and if he's not scoring a lot, didn't score a lot this year, he is who he is. He's a C. To me, he's a C hockey player in the NHL, and that's one of the reasons I think Ken Hughes would love to move him, but it's $4.5 million if I'm not mistaken, with the 1 year left on his contract. It can be hard to move a player like that. So
come trade deadline, again, it's all the points we were making because
trade deadline, yeah. I mean, same with. I mean, we'll get to Joel Edmondson later, but. I mean, his value will be higher at the trade deadline than it would be this summer also. So that's two guys that are probably in the same boat.
Next one, kind of interesting because he came into town a couple of years ago, and a lot of people were expecting big things. It was the famous quote by Marc Bergevin, "We're going all in." Josh Anderson. I it's tough, but I'm not an easy guy to please. I'm gonna give him a C plus. I thought all the off ice stuff, all the intangibles in that. I thought he was great. He was great last year. He's a leader. He's in the room. He's been here now. It feels like for a while, but it's not for a while. And, he stepped up at big moments this year. But again, just he is who he is. And, 30 points, 32 points in 69 games is not exactly a great point total. So he found his scoring touch a little bit with the 21 goals, but still looking for more consistent efforts out of Josh Anderson. So C plus.
I'm going to give him maybe a B minus because his game evolved this season with Marty St. Louis. He sees the game differently. He's grasped onto some of the concepts Marty wants to play, as opposed to just putting his head down and going as fast as he can up and down his wing and going hard to the net. He's become a more sort of an all-around hockey player. And also what he means in the locker room, I think, is a lot. I think it's underestimated how important he is to this team from a leadership standpoint, and how respected he is in the room, and how much he wants to play in Montreal. He loves playing for the Canadiens, and there's a big value in that, especially with this young team when they're trying to build this camaraderie and have. We've heard for so long how many guys don't want to play here. They don't want to be in Montreal. They have Montreal on their list of teams for no trade. Here's a guy who, when his dad grew up in the West Island, is a huge Habs fan. That factors into it, and Peter Mahovlich is a relative and still a friend of his, and that weighs in. But I think with Josh Anderson, I've written columns. I wrote a column a little while ago why I wouldn't trade him. Everybody's ready to trade him. Then you're going to be looking for another Josh Anderson to fill his role, and guys got a hard to find. So I'll say B minus then.
That I'll agree with. Like, it's just because I gave him a C plus, it doesn't mean I'm looking to trade him, because I agreed with that column. I think they shouldn't. I agree with a move not to trade him, because that is again, it's just a very rare type of player to get and to have on your team. And if teams fear that in the playoffs. So I just need to make it clear. I thought it was a little bit of an underwhelming. There was more good than bad, but still not enough for me to be like, okay, this is the Josh Anderson that Marc Bergevin had envisioned when he had signed him. Everyone's favorite player to talk about, depending on what side of the coin you are. Let's do it. Let's not again, we're not going to spend too much time on the rest of the guys on the team, but Jonathan Drouin. I'm going to give him. I'll give him a C. C minus. Well, I'll go C minus.
He finished second on the team in assists despite all the games that he missed. Only 2 goals, though. I mean, that's when you're paying the kind of money you're paying Jonathan Drouin. He's got to score more goals than that. But yeah, I mean, the thing with Jonathan, the effort level was there. Like, that's one of the things people have knocked on him in the past, is that he doesn't work. He worked hard. He worked hard. He tried hard. The goals didn't come. He had lots of chances he missed, but I mean, he's got to score more than 2 goals. But the assists were there. He really and he had injury issues too. Again, when he came back from the last injury he played, I thought he was okay. Like, Jonathan Drouin, people love to dump on him, and obviously the contract weighs into that. Yeah. So taking away what he made and just looking at how he played, I'd give him a C also.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you said it yourself. The effort level was totally there this year. I don't think anyone can make the case against that. And I think people are just, the fans that love to dump on him they're always going to dump on him, and that's just the way it is. Because
and despite everything,
he was just a very easy target this year. It's his last year here, and that's what it is.
Despite everything he's gone through, I asked him today if there's one word he can use to describe his time in Montreal. And he said, "Great." He says he's happy here, his wife and his kids, and despite all the pressure he went through and everything he went through personally and whatnot. One of the questions I asked him about staying here, you could see he was almost tearing up a little bit. He doesn't want to leave Montreal. He said he'd like to stay, but I think I don't think he's going to stay here. And I think it's probably best for him to go somewhere else and get a fresh start. And we'll see what happens. But I don't think he'll be back with the Canadiens.
Yeah, I don't either. It wouldn't it would surprise me if it's would or would not. It would, but I don't know. I feel bad. I feel bad for the guy because, if he is brought back, he's just going to get dumped on again, whether he's making $700,000 or $7 million. Obviously he's not going to make $7 million, but you know what I'm getting at. So I just felt bad that, he's an easy target to go after because of the money he's making. But this year, the results on the score sheet in terms of goals were not there, as you said, but you can't knock him. Every game he was out there, he was visibly trying. And that's really, in a season like this, all you could ask for. Feels like I haven't seen this guy play in a very, very long time, even though he played 64 games. But Christian Dvorak, again, another C for me. Again, good moments, but that was one where it's just he is who he is.
Yeah, me, it's a C- because you expect more from him. When they lost Danault, like some people thought he was would be an upgrade on Philip Danault, and Philip Danault was the most underrated player on the Canadiens. I was a big Philip Danault fan. I think he's a kind of player. We're talking about Josh Anderson, hard to replace. Guys like that, guys like Philip Danault are hard to replace too. And Christian Dvorak hasn't come close to replacing what Philip Danault brought to the Canadiens.
Yeah. Just the comparison is, it's just a little out of whack. Just because I feel like people had the assumption that he just played a more defensive game, but man, you have a guy in Philip Danault that's leaving Connor McDavid shotless multiple times in a season against the Canadiens. No, you can't really put a price on that. And what he did in the playoffs.
With the work, I wonder if he was almost overwhelmed here. He's been almost overwhelmed with the market. You go from playing in Arizona, right? You practice.
And this guy's and he's a quiet guy to begin with.
Yeah, you go play golf afterwards. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody cares if the Coyotes won or lost where you live. You just live a simple, nice, easy life, right? Show up, you play hockey, you go home, you forget about hockey. Nobody reminds you about it. Nobody knows. Half his neighbors probably don't even know who he is. The Coyotes, who are they, type of thing. And then you come here, and I think he honestly might have just been overwhelmed a little bit by this market.
Yeah. It's we'll see. He's still got a couple of years left, I believe, on his contract. So whether he stays or goes remains to be seen. We got our second defenseman. I was a big fan of this guy this year. Really huge fan, especially at the beginning of the season. David Savard, B straight. Just give him a B. That's a 3.3 in university. No, that's a 3 in university on the GPA scale. Just from the beginning of the season, the way he stepped in, leading the league in blocked shots. And, I'm not the biggest fan of block shots, but it just showed on a team like the way the Canadiens were and the way things were going at the beginning of the season and all the expectations, the way he came into the season and said, no, we're still a team. We're still playing hockey. We're still trying to win games. And, there were moments, against Colorado, he was mad after that first period, pissed off. Yep. For the way they played. So he gave it every game he was on the ice. He was another one that was when he was on the ice with the team, very, very consistent.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wrote a column about a month ago saying why he was going to get my Jacques Beauchamp trophy vote. And I was happy to see yesterday that he won the Jacques Beauchamp trophy as the unsung hero for the team, because he really was that. That's exactly what he was. He was huge with the 5 rookie defensemen in the lineup. We mentioned Matheson wasn't around for so long. Edmondson wasn't around. He was the veteran guy with all these kids. And Caden Goulet, as his career goes on, and if he goes on to be an all-star or whatever he goes on to be, I'm sure at the end of Caden Goulet's career, which is a long way away, but I'm sure when people ask him, who played the biggest role or who played the biggest impact in you early in your career becoming the defenseman, I'm sure David Savard will be the first or second person he mentions. Because David Savard, Goulet almost made the team last season out of training camp. playing with Savard. They paired him up again this year, and he was sort of, as a column I wrote the story about yesterday, he was like the father figure on the team, the big brother, or whatever you want to look at it. He's such a calm guy. Took these kids under his wing. Caden Gooley, go do your thing, go skate, go run all over the place. I'll be here. I'll back you up. I'll be back here. And as I wrote the story about yesterday, in junior, David Savard was an offensive-minded defenseman. He had more than a point a game. And then he said that with Marty's concept in his new system, it's been a challenge for him to sort of pick up his game because he had become a defensive defenseman with Columbus, and that was what he was known at. But he's shown offensive abilities this season. He's made some the toe drag moves and a couple of moves and passes. And as Marty St. Louis said, his feet aren't fast, but his mind is fast. He thinks the game quick. He knows where to be. He plays positions. He blocks shots like crazy. He ranked 8th, I think, in the NHL in block shots, despite missing like 20 games. So a big guy in the penalty kill. Just a real huge presence in the locker room. We were talking about Nick Suzuki earlier as a young captain. David Savard played a big leadership role. He was sort of the captain of the defensemen, right? He was the guy that really played a big role for them. Yeah, I agree with you, B.
And you know what? At 32 years old, and for Martin St. Louis to say he thinks the game very, very fast, those are guys that could stick around for a while because they adapt. They know how to adapt because there's some guys, once the legs go, it's very clear they can't play anymore in the NHL. At 32 years old, if you could think the game, you could put yourself in the right position. Kind of like, different type of defenseman, but kind of like how Andrei Markov played. As he got older, not able to skate as well as he once did, especially with the injuries, but he knew where to be on the ice to play to his own strengths. And that's exactly how I see David Savard.
Well, I remember when they changed the rules a few years ago there, and you couldn't block the first forechecker. Anybody used to go, they dump it in and you block. And talk with an NHL scout I really respect, and I was saying, boy, this is going to be tough for guys who can't defensemen who can't skate fast, who can't pivot, turn, get back, get the puck, and move it. He said, no, it's going to be harder for defensemen who can't think quick. And as he got the example at the time, he said, Chris Pronger isn't the fastest skater, but won't be a problem for him because before he even gets the puck, he knows what he's going to do with it. And then the other player, defense he brought up the same time, Sheldon Souris. He said Sheldon Souris is a quicker skater, but he doesn't think the game as quickly, so it's going to be harder for him. So David Savard, he thinks the game really quick, and that's really important as a defenseman, especially in today's NHL.
So let's move on to our next name. We're going to skip over a couple guys. We could go rapid fire on let's go rapid fire on the next two. I'll give Harvey Pinard, I'll give him a B for his time. He was pretty good, and he didn't play long enough for me to give him an A. So he'll get a B for me, and Jake Evans, I'll give a C minus. I'm kind of
I was
not as
Jake Evans. I was mentioning this to somebody yesterday that Jake Evans. I like Jake Evans as a hockey player. He's a really solid fourth line center, but he didn't have a good season. He'd probably be the first one to admit that. Harvey Pinard, I'd give him a B plus because when Cole Caulfield went down, Marty St. Louis said, we don't just need to have somebody who can replace his goals. We need to have somebody who can replace his enthusiasm. And I think Harvey Pinard did both of those things. I think he came in here. He's a really energetic guy, enthusiastic guy, made the most of every single opportunity he got. Made the opportunity when he first got up here. They put him on the line with Suzuki. He made an opportunity. It's going to be interesting to see where Harvey Pinard fits in this lineup next season. I'm certain he's going to be on the team. He's going to be – I don't think he's going to be on the first line, but I don't think he's going to be on the fourth line either. He can score. We talk about Cole Caulfield. He's not Cole Caulfield's level. They called him Lavalliger and Laval because he plays like Brendan Gallagher, and he does. But I think he's got better hands and better offensive thinking than Brendan does. Gallagher's goals are mostly they travel a foot, right, 2 feet. He's in the crease, he bangs them in. But Harvey Pinard can score from further out, and he sees the game. He has more of a better offensive mind or thinks the game quicker offensively than Brendan Gallagher does.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's go with him next, Brendan Gallagher. I'm gonna give him, and it's tough because it's tough because the price tag of the player comes along with the grade, and that just comes along with expectations. And I know he's not the same player he once was, and it was the last regime that gave him the contract. But I still, it pains me to do it, but I got to give him. He didn't make it quite into the D's, but he's gonna get a C minus. If the effort level wasn't there, which is never in question for Brendan Gallagher, he would have been in the D's, but just the C-, a very, very tough season. It started off, it looked like he was back at the beginning, the first few games, it looked like he was there. But then, just father time catching up, and the way he plays just caught up to him.
Well, after today, I'm going to give him a C just because I broke the same ankle twice and kept trying to play through it. Typical Brendan Gallagher. Brendan Gallagher is his own worst enemy, right? Broke his ankle, tried to play through it, played 3 games on a broken ankle, took 8 games off, came back on the broken, thought the ankle had healed, came back, broke it again. So it's hard. It's the effort level is always A for Brendan Gallagher. So that's it's. I find when a guy's effort level is that high, the lowest I'll give Brendan Gallagher is a C.
So the next two very very intriguing, exciting, interesting names. Caden Gooley. So close to giving him an A, but I got to give him the B+. He just gets a B+. He was very solid. He looked like when he stepped on the ice, the first 10 games, I want to say, he looked like he had been playing for 4 years already in the NHL. It was incredible to watch. He is going to be such a mainstay staple of that blue line for so many years to come. And the next one, Jordan Harris. Ups and downs, kind of invisible some nights, kind of visible some others, and invisible not in the good way. For the type of defenseman he is, C+ because it was his first full year, full-ish year, we'll call it. I'll give him a C+, and Caden Gooley gets the B+.
Yeah, Goulet, and one of the reasons he looks so good is because of David Savard, as I was mentioned earlier. But Caden Goulet, what a bright future this kid's going to have. He almost made the team last season. Hopefully, with all the injuries, he's got braces, I think, on both knees. He has a high ankle sprain. He's a young guy. It's going to be a long summer. That's a good thing. He'll have time to heal up. And for Jordan Harris, as a person, I give him an A+. He might be the nicest. Yeah. I've told my wife this and other friends. He might be the nicest kid I've ever met. And I'm not talking sports. He's the nicest. Yeah. He's such a nice, humble, smart kid. But from his on-ice performances, I give him a C. I think he would agree with that. He was okay. He wasn't great. But I think the future is bright for both of these guys. They're different. Caden Gooley is more of the all-around defense. He can be physical. He can do it. Caden Gooley can do everything, right? He has the ability to be a big star in the NHL. And I think Jordan Harris is one of those defensemen who could have like a 15-year career in the NHL, just being that smooth skating guy who can move the puck, smart player, thinks the game quick, like we were talking about earlier, does things right. I don't think he's ever going to be the big star player, but just because of the way he thinks the game, the way he can skate, the way he can move the puck, I think he'll have a long career, I think, in the NHL. He's going to be a successful hockey player.
Yeah, and like you said, just you got to see him on the day-to-day. The biggest thing that sticks out to me was when I believe it was, I don't want to get the event wrong because I'm going to look like an idiot, but I want to say it was after the whole I forget, it was the Stahl brothers refusing to wear pride, and he spoke out.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
And he spoke out, and I really respected that. I really respected what he said and how he did it. And he said what it was on his mind, which we beg for hockey players to do. So, that's the type of guy that will make a long career just by the way he conducts himself as a professional.
Well, I might have told you this quote. I went to Rob Ramage at the training camp this season. He was asked about Jordan Harris, and he said, if Jordan Harris wanted to be president of the United States, he could probably win. He's that kind of a personality. He's smart and as I say, he's one of the nicest kids I've ever met.
So no disrespect to the players that we're gonna jump over, but we're gonna group some together now. So I'm gonna go the next group. We're gonna go with a group of 3. We'll go Justin Barron, Jonathan Kovacevic, and Pezzetta. Pezzetta is kind of like one of those guys like Gallagher. The effort level is always there. I find he always plays his shift like it's his last. He's a 4th line player, pretty serviceable one. I'll give him a C. Hopefully he could find his way back into the organization in the future. Kovacevic, Also C minus, I guess. Just not really the type of player this team needs at this point on the blue line. And Justin Barron, from what I saw, he has the potential to be such a good defenseman. Oh my God, this guy has the offensive abilities. He just looks like a really good player. I really hope it works out for him. I'll give him, from the times he was on the ice, I'll give him a B minus.
I'll give Barron. Best thing, I mean, did not look good in training camp.
Yeah,
the Kings did everything to have him make the team, and he just didn't play well enough. Went down to Laval, didn't pout about it. We were mentioning Ryan Poehling before. Remember when he got sent down to Laval and he pouted and whined and everything else? He went down there, worked at his game, came back. He looked better every game. He's getting more confidence. So I agree with that. Kovacevic, I'd give a B minus because I think for a guy they picked up on waivers and had only played 4 games in the NHL. I was watching a game with my son. That was one of the road games we're watching on TV, and he says, I didn't even notice Kovacevic tonight. And I said, that's the biggest compliment you can give him if you're a 5'6" defenseman and nobody noticed you. That's a compliment. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't, and that's Kovacevic's game. He's another really smart guy, university guy. Went down as really smart on and off the ice, and he knows. One of his biggest strengths is he knows his limitations. He knows what he can and can't do, and he plays the game within his limitations. He doesn't make many mistakes. I think he finished the season as a plus player, if I'm not mistaken. You take plus minus with a grain of salt, but on a team that wasn't that good. Yeah, exactly. He's as a third pairing defenseman. If you don't get noticed, that's a good thing. And there were a lot of nights this season where you just didn't really notice him, but he makes a lot of smart plays. So I'll give him a B minus.
So not to, pile on this next guy, but, it just peeked into my brain. And with all due respect to him.
Why do I know who's coming here?
Yeah. I think you know exactly who's coming just by the way you said it. I mean, let's just go for it. I mean, Chris Weidman, I'll give him a D minus. I don't want to give him an F because it's just, I just found so mmany times, if you're kind of half paying attention to what's going on in the ice and then you see the Canadians get scored on and, it felt like 50% of the time it was his mistake. And, I feel for him because he was one of the good stories of last year and he deserved the contract he got, but man, he did not help himself this year.
I'm going to give him a C minus only because when the Canadians signed him, he's making $750,000 minimum. Yeah. They gave him 2 years. The reason they gave him 2 years is because they knew the role. He was going to be the 7th defenseman this season, basically, right? He wasn't going to play. Had all things gone well, right? So, and the reason they signed him is because he's such a good guy and well liked in the room. He's not gonna. You can make him a healthy scratch for 10 games. He won't bitch. He won't whine. He'll be a great teammate. He'll support his teammates. When you put him back on the ice, he'll give you everything he got. So that was the role. He ended up playing a role and playing more games and more ice time than he should have. As I said, the effort level, the compete level was there. But I wrote in a column the other day, like I don't think Wyland's going to be back with the Canadians next season. I don't know what the market would be for the Canadians to try and trade him. I think the scenario I can see happening, Edmondson will be hard to trade in the offseason. I think still they're going to have like eight or nine defensemen. I think Wyland will be the odd man out. I can see them putting him on waivers. If somebody claims him, great. If somebody doesn't, he'll go down to Laval and he'll be great in Laval. He won't whine.
That's the perfect spot for him.
And he'll be really good in Laval. Like the way he can skate and move the puck. If he went down to Laval, he'd be great. Like he'd be really a dominant defenseman down there. Difference to the AHL. So when they signed him because of the character he has and because he would accept. You need that guy who's not going to, especially on a team with so many young defensemen. You don't need a veteran who's a healthy scratch and he's bitching and moaning and complaining or whining to the media he's going to support the young guys as much as he can. And he knows, I mean, he played in the KHL. He was a top defenseman in the KHL. And he came back and he said every day he was in the KHL, all that was in his mind is how do I get back to the NHL? He wasn't happy over there, even though he played well. He got back here. So to me, just because of he didn't have a good season. He didn't play that well, but the game last night against Boston, he's the first guy to go and cross-check Greer in the ribs for
Yeah.
You know, he's a team. He knows his role and he plays his role. So that's the way I feel about Wideman.
And I had kind of mixed feelings about, the Canadians and how they, reacted to Toronto putting in the e-bug against them, or the amateur tryout guy. The one thing I'll say is, I thought it was a really good clip of what Wideman said, but at the same time, if you don't want that to happen, maybe just play better and don't lose 7-1.
Wideman wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's a little guy. He's like a little pit bull. I mean, remember last season, game in New Jersey when they were running Caulfield and Suzuki, and there was nobody else really around, and Wideman was the guy who dropped the glove. Wideman's the guy who cross-checks Greer in the ribs. Wideman, he's a fiery guy.
Oh, we seem to. I think we may have lost Stu. He's back. There he is. We got you on mute right now. Still can't hear you, but we'll get that fixed up. I'm sure any second. But I got to agree with Stu. Chris Wideman, he brings the fire, and I respect that a little. I respect it a lot, actually, especially at the NHL level. But just with the way he went, his season went, I just couldn't really give him all that much praise. 4 guys left on the list before we wrap it up. We're also going to wrap it up on a very, very positive note. I see Stu and Salmon and Yellow are trying things out right now, so I'll get word if Stu's going to come back. We're already at 11:01 anyways, so the next guy is going to be Arbor Jacki. You're back. Okay, great.
You hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now. Perfect. That's perfect. All right, so the next guy I was just saying, I'll give you the floor for him. We're gonna go Arbor Jacki.
Well, Arbor Jacki, I mean, a B. What a story, right? Not drafted, comes in one of the 5 rookies. Got better, got more confident as the season went on. Rangy guy, covers a lot of space, not fun to play against, willing to drop the gloves, good shot, gets the puck through from the point. They use him on the power play. He was effective because he can get the puck through. He's smart with the puck. He's really, what a surprise. Like, you realize scouting is not an exact science, and Arbor Jacki is an example of that. Like, nobody, despite his toughness and his size, there was still no team who thought he was worth taking a chance, even in the 6th or 7th round. And then he got his opportunity and made the most of it.
And you know what? I found in the preseason, a lot of people said, "Wow, this fighter, he could play." No, he's a player who happens to be able to fight. Exactly. So that's the perfect way of putting it for him. So next player, one that a lot of people had high hopes for. I'm a fan of his. Personally, I always love listening to him speak. Very, very unfortunate season for him. Joel Edmondson. As much as it pains me, I have to give him a D+. I mean, not a very good season for Joel Edmondson.
No, he was minus 28. I think he finished or something like that. He was he really had a hard time. I remember at the golf tournament, he was named assistant captain. We asked him about his back, and he said, "It's good." He said, "I'm swinging the golf club. Everything's fine." And then he had that freaky collision with Suzuki just before the start of training camp. Threw his back out again, came back, threw his back out again. Doing anything in life with a bad back isn't easy. Playing pro hockey with a bad back is really not easy, and it showed. He really struggled. And then when he did come back at the end, he was a guy who was playing like, just let me get through this season and not get hurt again. Like, let me prove to myself that I can play and not get hurt. He wasn't the same physical presence he was when the Canes went to the Stanley Cup final. He struggled. It was a tough season for him. Another, as I mentioned, he played a big leadership role in the room. Helped me out, but he had a hard time on the ice. There was nights that I think in the back of his mind, it was just he's thinking about his back and is it going to go out again? And even the game last night, there was times he was like an easy breakout pass and he would throw it in the guy's skates or would throw it ahead of him. It's just he's not playing the game without thinking about either there is pain or there might be pain or is my back going to go out this shift. So it was a tough season for Joel Edmondson.
Yeah, and it's tough because you know how important he is in the locker room, and he gives it he gives it his all as much as he can, and even last night, he dropped the gloves. I was so surprised to see that. I was incredibly surprised to see that, in the last game of the season. Your summer is starting tomorrow.
Thing. That's where the leadership thing comes in, and it was. I mean, that cross check that Greer gave in the face was the Hoffman.
Yeah,
I mean, a 1-game suspension was a joke, and Edmondson just decided that the NHL didn't punish him enough, and he was going to punish him, and he landed one really.
Yeah, he landed a couple good ones on him. I found. All right, we're gonna save the most controversial for last, I guess we'll call it as the adjective. But so we're going to move on to one last one. We don't have to spend too much time on this player. It's kind of been the same his whole tenure here. Yoel Armia, I'll let you take the lead on that one.
I'm despite the hat trick in a meaningless game with an empty net goal, he's the only guy I'm going to give an F, just because it's so frustrating to watch this guy, and with all the ability and the skill level and everything else. And it's just, he seems like a super nice guy when you talk to him.
Yeah.
Big, nice, sort of shy guy, but he plays hockey like a big, nice, sort of shy guy. And it's frustrating to watch at nights. And I'm sure it can be frustrating for some of his teammates also, when it's just, he is who he is at this point. There's a reason, former first-round pick. You see why he was a first-round pick. He's got all the skill and talent in the world, but it just, he'll have a game like, you'll go, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And then he puts the invisible man suit back on, and you don't see him for 10, 12 games. And, we haven't brought up Gurianov, but when Gurianov came here, the first few games, he looked great. And from reading stuff about him, there's a lot of similarities to Yoel Armia. And as more and more games went on, I saw them. Like, here's a big guy who skill, talent, shot. When he wants to play, he can be really good. But there's a lot of nights it looks like he just doesn't want to play.
So, I agree with you. I'll give him the F as well. It's just the most puzzling player for that on the Canadians. And you know what? I like the way you put it. He plays as a shy, nice guy on the ice. We'll call him, it took me, I don't know how long his tenure has been here. He's got to have been here for 4 years at least. We'll call him now the Gentle Giant. The next guy, also kind of a giant. The last player we will give a grade to, kind of tough because, it's been a while since he played, but he had all the expectation of the world on his shoulders. And I don't want to say fell completely flat, but the game wasn't for him this year, we'll call it. And that's Juraj Slafkovsky. I'll give you the honors of going first.
C. I think he wasn't ready to play in the NHL. I thought that right from training camp, rookie camp, he never really stood out, never made me anything to say like, wow, this guy's amazing, first overall pick. The game just seemed to move too quick for him. He skates with his head down. He's lucky he got rocked a few times. If he doesn't learn to pick his head up, he's going to get, when you do that playing as a kid growing up, when you're as big as he is, or even maybe some of the European leagues, guys bounce. I remember one of the rookie camps, he was skating, he had his head down, and somebody went to run him and bounced off him. In the NHL, they don't bounce off. When they hit you, they hit you.
Yeah.
He's just, to me, he didn't look ready for the NHL. He's only 18 years old. To me, it's not his fault that he wasn't ready. Not many 18-year-olds are. He's the only guy from this year's draft who really played any top picks, who played any really significant time. Shane Wright, played a handful of games in the NHL, ended up back in junior. I think I understand why the Canadians started Slafkovsky to start the year, the number one pick, the hype. He was drafted at the Bell Center. But I was surprised after it looked like he wasn't ready, that after 8 games or whatever, they didn't send him down to Laval. I'm surprised they didn't send him to the World Juniors. So for number one overall pick, it's hard to be. Joe Thornton wasn't great his first year in the NHL as a number one pick. So the effort was there for Slafkovsky. I don't think it was too big of a jump 18 years old, new country, new language, although his English is very good, smaller rink, bigger, tougher players. You might be the biggest guy on the ice still, but you're not necessarily the strongest guy on the ice. The NHL players are strong. Brendan Gallagher's a little guy. He's strong like a bull. As I mentioned earlier, Nick Suzuki's not a big guy, but he's really strong. And he wasn't ready to play a full season in the NHL. He ended up not because he was injured, but he would have if he hadn't been injured. So I'll give him a C. Like he was, for an 18-year-old kid in his first season, he was okay.
I'll give him the C as well, and all those reasons you pointed out, and just for the expectation thing, and it goes back to just because I'm taking a peek at the comment section, and there's people, being a little hard on him, and just like you said, he's 18 years old. Look no further than Kirby Dach. Guy spent 3 years getting hammered in Chicago by the media and by fans, and then he gets traded, and now it seems like he's putting it together, and I'm excited to see what he does next season. That's not what you want to happen to Uri Slafkovsky, and especially to a first overall pick, because they say in the NFL that if you miss on a first round pick, it sets your team back 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what drafting missing on a first overall pick, or you didn't miss on him but you traded him away, would do to your team. That would set your team back quite a few.
The thing that surprised me with Slafkovsky and the way the Canadians used him this year is that when lead up to the draft and after the draft, and Kent Hughes had said that he told the scouts, I don't want the player who's the best player now. I want the player who's going to be the best player in 5 years from now or 4 years from now. And Slafkovsky might be that guy 4 years from now. But as I said, I understand why they wanted him to start the season here. Maybe they would have started, he would have played great and played the whole season here, but it was obvious he wasn't ready to play in the NHL, and they decided to keep him here anyway. So I just think it would have been I don't think they did him any real favors, put it that way.
I don't know if that siren that's going on outside is coming
I don't
through.
think it's my place. I was wondering.
No, there was a fire truck driving by because I saw you jump a little bit there.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let's end off on a positive before we end off here. I appreciate you staying a little late.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just pick our favorite moment of this Canadian season. There are a couple to pick from, but for me, it's pretty obvious what I'm going to go with. And I think you might have the same answer because we talked about it, at length one week, which was the triple low five shared between Carey Price and PK Subban on the PK Subban. I don't want to call it Memorial Night, but the night that they honored him, I thought that was just a really, really nice night, and a night that felt good on a season as a whole, that you could look back on that didn't feel so good. There were good moments, but that was one that it was a night that genuinely was a great night for the Canadians.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the one moment that was a little bit staged. Obviously, they knew they were going to do it for. I'm going to go with Mike Pizzetta riding his stick. I absolutely love that. I mean, I got a bit of a soft spot for Mike Pizzetta. I always enjoyed talking with him. He's a guy who's gives everything he's got. He knows his role. He hits everything that moves when he's on the ice. And I loved his reasoning for why he did it. Some people criticized him, and he said, when am I ever going to get a chance to score the winning goal in the shootout of an NHL game again? And that will be on highlight reels for longer than the triple low five was. I loved it. I think hockey needs more of that. I think sports are supposed to be fun. It wasn't done to hurt the other team, or it was just done because he's a guy who had a moment that he probably never expected to experience in the NHL, and he made the most of it. And I thought it was fantastic, and even the confidence. He said, he was sitting on the bench looking at Burroughs, who had coached him in the AHL, and Pizzetta had scored 2 goals on 4 penalty shots he took while he was playing in the NHL, and he says, "I have a move." Like, he has one move. He has that one move. And no NHL goalie had seen it because he'd never done a shootout in the NHL.
Yeah, that's right.
He knew the move he was going to make. He knew exactly what he was going to do, and he knew how he was going to celebrate it. A tribute to Tiger Williams, who retired before Michael Pizzetta was even born, which makes it even better. That moment, I just loved it. I thought it was just really cool, and I was happy, and I was really happy for Pizzetta. I just thought it was a really cool moment. And so was the Carey Price and the PK Subban thing. It was sort of a slap in the face to the old administration.
Yeah.
But I thought Pizzetta's riding the stick was just fantastic.
Yeah. The only thing that would have made Pizzetta's better, I have such a bad memory with these things. That game was on the road, right? If I'm mistaken. Yeah. So the only thing that would have made it better was at home. Yeah. If that game was at home,
because I mean,
yes,
it was at home.
Yeah.
It almost was. There was so many Canadians fans in Buffalo that might have factored in a part to why you did it. The other thing that would have made it better is you had thrown off the helmet and let the hair.
That's real. That would be real old time hockey right there.
Yeah, that would have been. But it was as I say, sports are supposed to be fun, and hockey players are so they're known for speaking in cliches and don't sort of step out of that box that hockey players seem to be confined in. Yeah. Don't show your personality. Don't make it look like you're showing up the other team. And it was cool. That was just really
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Sports are fun, and doing this is very fun. And Stu, again, just thank you very much for spending your Friday evening with me and with the rest of the Sick Army. And hey, we got a lot more to go. I mean, we got a lot of things on the docket. We got May 8th coming up, which is the draft lottery. We got the actual draft coming up. We got free agency coming up. The off season may have started in the NHL, but it does not start for us ever.
There's no off season for the Canadians in Montreal when it comes to fan interest. It's really is. It's amazing. It's almost like a Habs sickness in this city. People can't get enough, even when they're in 28th place.
Exactly. So Stu, thank you very much, and have yourself a fantastic weekend.
All right, you too.
All right, that was our player grades for the 2022-2023 season. All right, here we go. We're just about to end the podcast, but before I do, I have to mention the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro's Tascam equipment is supplied by Ericsson Audio, the choice of musicians, engineers, and broadcast professionals. And that's not it. Okay. I got something really, really fun because I made an unofficial deal with Sammy. So Agnello, too bad for you. And Sammy, I mean, you didn't agree to it, but you kind of didn't say no. So I don't know. I think it holds, and I have the text to prove it. So what I'm going to say is join our NHL playoff bracket. That's right. The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro and Matt Ohayon. We're doing an NHL playoff bracket presented by Energy Transportation Group. Click the link in the YouTube description or on our social medias. It is completely and totally free to enter. What do you win? I don't know. You win bragging rights if you win. You know what I win? I win a 200% raise. Thank you very much, Sammy. You didn't say no. So that still holds up in court. Thank you guys for joining us on every night of the week. Since we started going 5 nights a week, it's since I got the opportunity to host Friday nights. I've been having a great time. So thank you very much for joining us, especially the entire season. It's really appreciated. But like I said, we're not going to stop. The Sick Army doesn't stop. We know you guys want your Habs content, and we're going to keep bringing it to you every single day for the foreseeable future. And that's what we do because we love it, and we love our Montreal Canadiens. And like I said to Stu, we still got so much to talk about. There's a draft lottery coming up. We didn't even we touched upon the playoffs, but this is a Habs podcast. We just threw in a little bit of a sprinkle of the NHL playoffs there, but we'll be certain to talk about those as well. So if you haven't already and you enjoyed the show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube. If you catch your podcasts on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, listen to us there. Hit the subscribe button or follow button there. It is very much appreciated. Thank you guys for listening. I'm out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature.